Hi, and welcome to Infertility Unfiltered, where fertility experts and warriors are joining forces to provide you with facts, information, support, and inspiration so you can take back control of your life and get your baby on board. Hi, I'm Jennifer Robertson, and today we are very lucky to be joined by Lucy Lyons. Now, Lucy is a fully qualified and experienced embryologist, having spent 17 years in the fertility industry. She became increasingly frustrated over the business aspect that was creeping into much of the decision-making within large IVF companies and the huge gaps that was creating for patients accessing those services. As a result, Lucy now helps women and couples feel empowered and, more importantly, educated and in control of their fertility, whether they are right at the beginning of considering growing their families or in the depths of IVF treatment. Lucy now offers her services through Lyons Fertility, with her website, blog, online memberships group, courses, and of course, her one-on-one support. And today, we are going to be talking about sperm, because that is one half of the equation.
Absolutely.
That makes an embryo. Now we're going to be talking about what makes good sperm, what does a sperm analysis analyze, and the best way to get a good sample. So, if you stick around to the end, Lucy is also going to tell you how you can get your hands on her free Fertility Foundation series, which is a 5-part series on the foundations of fertility. So thank you so much for joining us, Lucy Lyons.
My pleasure. And now that all sounds really impressive. I feel,
I love it when you hear it for the first time, like, oh, wow, that really is me. So before we get started on the interesting topic of sperm,
yes,
I would love for you to tell us just a little bit about yourself outside of all of that and what drove you into doing what you're doing right now.
So I actually started as a vet nurse, interestingly. I did a Bachelor of Agricultural Science, majored in animal breeding and genetics, got my vet nursing certificate and went and worked in cattle and sheep, artificial insemination in cattle and sheep. And very, very quickly, I think it was a week where we did 2,000 artificially inseminated 2,000 sheep in a week. I just went, oh, this is just not for me. This is about making money for farmers. These sheep and cattle don't care whether they're pregnant or not. I need to get into human stuff. So I then went and did a postgraduate diploma in reproductive science, which led me to a position as an embryologist here in Melbourne with Monash IVF, where I worked for a couple of years. So an embryologist is the scientist behind the scenes, playing with the sperm and the eggs, making the embryos, choosing which embryo goes back, and basically making babies. It was the first time in my life when I started working as an embryologist, the first time in my life that I finally had something that I was just, I would wake up in the morning and think, do I get to go to work today? Oh, yes, yeah, cool, awesome. I was one of those really lucky people who just makes you sick because I loved my job so much. My job took me all around the world. I worked in an IVF clinic in Sweden for a while. I worked in an IVF clinic in the UK for a while. I worked in Dublin. I travelled through southern Germany and Austria, supporting IVF clinics to improve their success rates, and then came back to Australia and worked in GP education. But when I first started as an embryologist, 20 years ago it is now, all IVF clinics were not for profit. So all of the money generated from IVF cycles, and the cost of an IVF cycle was very similar then as it is now, all of any money generated from that went straight back into research. And so it was very much a collaborative thing between embryologists and doctors and nurses and patients, and it was very much a thing. These days, there are multiple levels of management and business above the doctors, or not above, but alongside the doctors and the scientists and the nurses. And it has become big business. There's just no two ways about it. It's all, most of the clinics, not all of them, but most of the clinics are owned by shareholders and multinational companies that have, hundreds or tens of clinics worldwide. And there are some bonuses that come with that, but unfortunately there are some real negatives that come with that too. And I think in the middle of all of that, the patients are just being sort of, well, everyone says, I feel like a number. I feel like I'm just one of, I don't know how many people on a production line, and that's not how it used to be. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. And there were a few triggers that really pushed me over the edge towards the end of my time working in corporate IVF. And the final straw was when I was made redundant from my GP education role. And I was 37 weeks pregnant at 44 years old with a rainbow baby after 5 miscarriages and 7 years of trying. And it broke me. And I just went, no, you know what? That's it. I'm done with that. I actually need to go back to helping people, and I can help people. I have the skills, I have the knowledge, I have the experience, and I have the ability. I can, explain things in ways that people understand. And, that was always my role within these clinics, was to run the patient information evenings and talk to patients and stuff like that. So now I'm doing it.
I love it. And that's exactly what we want when we're on this journey, because there is so much information and acronyms and different languages, and we're not scientists, but we're having to know it.
The people who work in it are so used to talking at this level that they might drop down to this level, and it's not because you're stupid at all. It's just that this is not something you learnt about. And as a population, we don't learn about fertility at school. We learn how to use a condom and how not to get pregnant, and that's about it. And after that, you don't learn about blastocysts and day 3 embryos and morphology and motility and all of, any of that stuff. And so even estrogen and progesterone get missed, let alone all the other things. So I think it's not that, and a lot of people that you come across within the industry think you're stupid because you don't understand what they're talking about. But it's not that you're stupid. It's just that it's new. I would be the same if I went to an accountant. Whenever I go to my accountant, I'm like, I'm the dumbest person in the world, excuse me. But it's not that I'm dumb. I know I'm not dumb. It's just that it's not my thing. And, same goes the other way. So
absolutely. So let's talk sperm, because really that is one half of the equation of creating an embryo. And I think that there's so much emphasis on the female side of things and our eggs and all of that. So I guess what I want to talk to you about today is, what makes a good sperm specimen, what issues can arise, and what we can do, what the male can do to actually improve their sperm as well.
So the reason that sperm and semen is not really talked about as much is because the whole process of having any kind of investigation done into your fertility is about working out where the hurdle is, what's actually stopping you from getting pregnant, and then jumping the hurdle. So when you go to see a fertility specialist in an IVF clinic, they'll say, for example, oh, you're not ovulating. Let's give you these drugs and we'll get you ovulating and then you'll get pregnant. If it seems like you've got the timing right, maybe the eggs aren't fertilizing. Okay, well, we'll do ICSI instead of IVF and we'll jump that hurdle. And male factor infertility is a really easy hurdle to jump, because if there's not enough sperm, well, that's okay. We'll just concentrate it and do ICSI, which is where you inject a single sperm into the egg, and that will solve the problem. So they're about solving the problem. But I think what gets missed a lot of the time is what you'll find in the Eastern medicine and some of the alternative adjunct therapies, where rather than just jumping the hurdle, they actually want to help you either decrease or remove the hurdle. And so that's where you get into investigations into sperm parameters. And so in the Western medicine culture, IVF culture, you will usually just jump the hurdle, and you don't get much discussion about sperm because you just go, oh, well, there's not enough. We'll just concentrate it and then it'll be okay. So tick, problem solved. But I think it's important to think about, well, hang on, why is there a low sperm count? Why, and can we actually fix that ourselves and avoid having IVF? Because maybe if we spend 6 months trying to fix that ourselves, maybe we don't need to spend $10,000 having IVF, or $8,000, whatever it happens to be, wherever you are. So yes, the very first thing that I tell absolutely everyone to do is get the information. We can't do anything until we have the data. So we need to know, are there eggs, are there sperm, can they mate? And are there sperm is a really simple thing to do. We do a semen analysis. Simple. It's really important to have the semen analysis done by an andrologist, not by a pathologist. A lot of GPs will recommend you have it done by a pathologist because it's often bulk billed. But I think if you're looking down the barrel of fertility treatment, spending $100 having a proper semen analysis done is not a bad thing to do. I think it's a really good thing to do. So when you have a semen analysis, we're looking for, and as an embryologist, I've seen more sperm than your average hooker. There's your quote. What we're looking for when we're looking at a semen analysis, we're looking for what is the volume of the sample, because generally speaking, sperm only make up about 5% of an ejaculate. So what is the volume of the sample first? Then we want to know how many sperm are in that sample, what percentage of those sperm are swimming, so are actually moving, and what percentage of the ones that are moving in a forward progression, so they've got direction, they're not just swimming round and round and round in circles. And then we also want to know what they look like, what shape they are. And this is not something that just anyone can do. So the first things you can do are done in a computer. So the computer will assess that. So you put a droplet of the sample on a slide, pop the slide in a special reader thing, and the reader thing spits out those numbers for you. But when it comes to the morphology of the sperm, that's a scientist looking down a microscope, making a call. So if that scientist doing that does 5 or 10 a week, you're going to get a pretty good kind of result. If that scientist does 20 a day, you're going to get a completely different quality of result. Now,
in terms of the answer that they provide?
Yeah, because it's a subjective thing. What you're looking for when you're looking at the morphology is the right shape. So in a normal sample, in a normal ejaculate, roughly 90% of the sperm will be abnormally shaped. And that's quite a shock for a lot of people. They think, oh my God, 90% of my sperm are abnormal. That's really normal to have 90%, sometimes even up to 95% of the sperm abnormally shaped. But the judgment on their shape is a purely subjective judgment. It's like me looking at a tree and saying that tree's pretty, it's a beautiful shape. And someone else saying, no, it's got that bit sticking out over there. And you go, oh yeah, I didn't see that. You know, it's purely based on the ability of the scientist to make a judgment call. So if that scientist is not very experienced in what they're doing, they might miss something. Now, it's not that important really, but when I started as an embryologist, well, when I went to the UK, so when was that? I started working in the UK in 2003. So we're going back a few years now. That was when I started looking at morphology. Prior to that, I'd never looked at morphology of sperm before, and it wasn't considered to be important. It was thought that the normal sperm would find its way to the egg. So we didn't really need to know. And to see which sperm were normally shaped, you have to stain them, then you can't use them. So you have to put some stain on them and then they can't be used because they're dead, because you put the stain on them. So you need, then there's all sorts of mathematical equations about the sample size that you've taken and whether you can extrapolate that to the actual ejaculate and all of those kinds of things. So it wasn't considered to be that important. But at that time, roughly 20% of cases going through IVF were considered to be of unexplained infertility. Now, going back, we can explain a lot of those unexplained infertility by looking at the sperm morphology.
And it's interesting because my husband, when we first went and saw a fertility specialist at the very beginning of our journey, like we were both tested and his sperm came back as low, I think they called it low motility.
Yep.
And so all of these factors, the volume, the direction they're swimming, all of these things have an impact on, whether they fertilize the egg or not, and whether an embryo is created.
Yes and no, both of those things. So what I say to people is we need to put it in context. So are there eggs, are there sperm, can they meet? Really simple. The sperm we need to do a little bit of maths, and it's not that difficult. Sometimes it's a bit difficult for my brain because I've used a calculator all my life, so I haven't exercised those brain cells enough. But if you have an ejaculate that is of average volume, so that's around 3 mils, and you have a count that is an average kind of count, which is anywhere between 20 million sperm per mil and 200 million sperm per mil. Let's go to the lower end. 20 million sperm per mil is kind of the cutoff for normal. So you got 20 million sperm per mil and 3 mils. So you got 60 million sperm in an ejaculate. If 50% of those are motile, which is what we would want to see, then we've still got 30 million sperm, motile sperm. If 5% of those are normally shaped, 5% of 30 million is still quite a lot.
And you only need one?
Well, everyone says you only need one, but you actually need around about 100,000 sperm per egg.
Okay.
Because they're like cyclists in the Tour de France. They need to sit in each other's slipstreams. So, and it's a long way from the cervix to the top of the fallopian tubes where they have to meet the egg. So it's a very long way. So if you've only got one setting off at this end, he's got to get through all that cervical fluid. He's got to get all the way through the uterus. He's got to make a decision about which way to go because there's only an egg in one side. He can't make a decision. He doesn't have a brain. So it's you need more than one, unfortunately. And you need around about 100,000 sperm per egg to surround the egg in order for the egg to fertilize. Only one makes it through, but the egg is shrouded in a number of 2 different cell types, big cloud of cells, and the process of the sperm getting through those cells is called capacitation. And what that does, so we're back to the morphology again. If the sperm is the wrong shape, it doesn't have the right chemicals on its head to get through. So if it's the wrong shape, it might not have a tail, or it might have 2 tails, or it might not get there in the first place because it's just going round and round and round in circles or whatever. But assuming it's got 1 head and 1 tail and 1 mid-piece and it looks roughly okay, if its hat doesn't have the right chemical compounds on it, it's not going to be able to make its way through all of those cells to get to the egg. And the process of getting through there is a series of chemical reactions that have to happen in a certain order, in a certain time frame, in order for the sperm to actually be able to get to the egg. We like to think that the sperm just swims up to the egg and gets in, bang. But it's actually a whole series of things that have to happen. So you do need more than one sperm. And knowing what the sperm parameters are at the beginning by having a semen analysis is really important.
I think that's just fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So, can they improve their sperm? Like, can they change? Do they have the ability to change these things?
Yes, absolutely. So sperm production is kind of like a production line at Volvo, right? The round cells, normal cells, start at the start of the production line, just a round cell with a nucleus and whatever. And it takes about 42 days from there to the other end of the production line, which is where they have the lovely hat and the shape and the mid-piece and the tail and all the things they need, and they swim off and go and hang out in the warehouse. Now, the warehouse, otherwise known as the epididymis. When the warehouse gets full, where most of us have heard the line from a boyfriend at some time in our lives that the warehouse is full, it's going to explode. Come on, bullshit. Sorry, warehouse doesn't explode. The body just reabsorbs them. So it just starts killing them off. It doesn't stop the production line. It just starts killing them off. Then the warehouse gets emptied periodically, but the production line keeps going. Now, if you have a fever, or some kind of illness or you wear really tight jocks, or you wear lycra a lot, or you sit on heated seats in your taxi all day, every day, or you're a truck driver and you're sitting on your balls all the time, then the production line can be damaged. And if you have a fever, the production line can just shut down entirely. So then whatever's sitting in the warehouse is fine, but the production line's shut down. So the production line starts up again. It takes 42 days for the new cars to be rolling off the end heading to the warehouse. in that time, you can make a lot of impact on what's rolling off the end. And that can be done through avoiding endocrine disrupting chemicals, through diet and nutrition, through changing your lifestyle, like your lycra pants, your cycling, your sitting on them, your hot baths. There's an example of a guy who worked as a mechanic and he was covered in grease every day. So every day he came home, he took all his clothes off, put them in the laundry, and then he sat in a really hot bath every day. And this just came out as a matter of chit chat with his fertility specialist. It wasn't really part of the investigation. But the fertility specialist said, hang on a minute, I want you to stop having your hot baths. I want you to have a shower instead. They got pregnant naturally. Now, these things are anecdotal. They're not, that's not a randomized controlled clinical trial that we can rely on as evidence. But when you put it together with some of the other anecdotal evidence we have, we can say, well, you know what, it's actually not that hard to change that one thing, and it might help.
Yeah.
We can't prove that it's definitely going to help, but hey, why not give it a go? So same goes for cycling, sitting in hot seats, avoiding the endocrine disrupting chemicals and the nutritional stuff. They're not difficult things to change. You don't have to change your entire life.
Mm-hmm. And is it right to say that you can change it did you say 42 days? Like, so after 42 days, you would see a different result. I just, that is so helpful, because I think it's always put on the female of what we can be doing, but it's good to see that the male should actually be doing some things as well.
The difficulty comes when, and the reason the emphasis is placed on the woman so much is because we actually only produce one egg per month. So it's the whole human reproduction thing is incredibly inefficient. We produce one egg a month. They're producing millions of these things all the time. Now, if we can improve that sperm count, yeah, great. Maybe it wasn't that bad anyway. Maybe it was. I don't know. And this commonly held idea, like you said, you only need one. Technically, you do only need one, but actually, you really need a whole lot more. It's easy to overlook that and think, well, you know what? There are enough there. Let's focus on this one egg. And so I can see why that happens, but I think I try to encourage all of my clients to do everything they can in those 3 months before conception or before egg collection, because even if you don't get pregnant naturally, which is what we really want to happen, but if you don't in that time, you're going to front up to IVF and be giving the lab the best quality sperm and eggs you can possibly produce, because you've put all the work into it and you've done everything you can. So when you hand over that raw material to the lab, you can go, this is, I'm confident that whatever you can do with this is what we can do.
Absolutely. Now, this is where your Fertility Foundation series comes in.
Yep.
So tell us how we can get our hands on it and what it actually does.
So the Fertility Foundation's series is a 5-part series looking at nutrition, lifestyle, vitamins, endocrine disrupting chemicals, and mindset, which I think are the 5 foundations to fertility, basically. Regardless of whether you've had 6 cycles of IVF, no cycles of IVF, you're never having IVF, you've only just started thinking about trying, wherever you're at, I think these foundations need to be covered. And if you do end up having IVF, they're only going to make your IVF more successful. It's very easy to think, oh, bugger it, I'm having IVF anyway, who cares? It's out of my hands now. They're doing it. I'm just going to sit back here and eat my KFC and smoke and drink and, do all the things because I'm having IVF anyway. But actually, the raw material that you can give the lab is going to make a big impact on the outcome at the other end. So
absolutely. And I love how you explain it like that. Yeah, it's so important. So where can they grab a copy of that?
So they can grab a copy on my website. If you head to www.twolionsfertility.com.au, you will find a little drop down comes down, and you just put your details in there and click yes please, sign me up. Alternatively, you can head to my Instagram. You'll find me at 2 Lions Fertility, and in my bio there's a link to it. And you will also find me on Facebook, although less regularly on Facebook. I'm trying to do more on Facebook. I'm getting there. I do have a VIP group on Facebook where I invite various experts to come and chat. We've got, this is Alice Rose from the UK coming in to talk to us this Sunday. So if you wanted to join that, you're very welcome to too. But the Fertility Foundations is in all those places. Go and sign up. Do it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about all things sperm, Lucy. It's been an absolute pleasure. I have enjoyed your explanation.
With one last thing, when I was training to be an embryologist, in my first week that I was learning to be an embryologist, it's the embryologist who shows the male partner into the men's room. And so we have to go out there and say to the guys, you know, come in here and tell them what they needed to do. And at the time at Monash IVF, we had 2 cups taped together, and we expected the guys to produce the first part of the sample in 1 cup and the rest in the other, because we know that most of the sperm is in the first part of the sample. And as we were walking out, it was my turn to ask the guy into the room for the first time ever, and I was a bit nervous. And my manager said to me, "Now, Lucy, whatever you do, don't say, 'Please come with me.'"
Oh my goodness, there would have been so many puns.
I mean, follow me this way.
I love it, love it, love it. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Now, if you enjoyed this video as well, please feel free to share it, like it, and make sure you subscribe to this channel as well, because this is just one of many amazing interviews with amazing people who can explain things much better than I can. And it's all part of the Infertility Unfiltered series. So thanks for watching.